I'm sure there's video in here somewhere about something relevant and worthwhile talking about. So let's begin with then the question that I'll put to you guys. Do you know what times we're living in? Have you noticed a behaviour change? Have you noticed, your environment changing? And have you noticed it in a short period of time? Maybe over a long period of time. For some people, they've known for a long time that things are changing, and let's ask the question: are they changing in a positive manner? I'm talking about attitudes of people, their behaviour, and I'm also talking on the other scale of things, more to the point, with nature. Just for instance, I popped over to the city to pick my parents up, because usually on a Thursday they come over to me and we have a meal together. I try and do that at least once a week, and I try and stay in touch, if I can, on the phone as well, or maybe on Skype sometimes. But while I was on the drive, there was a wasp on the window, and that's unusual to me to see things like that. I mean, I've seen bees as well at this time of the year. I mean, right now we must be having on average around 10 degrees Celsius. I think we've had one or two maybe ground frosts this winter so far, and there are still flowers flowering in the garden. But I was having a bit of a conversation with my wife last night, and I was saying, you can see, over this Christmas holidays, you get together with your family and you can see that there are, even within my family, noticeable changes with the behaviour of some people. It seems like some are becoming a little bit more bitter. They're angry. It's noticeable. But I, as well as many people, would have known this for a long time. I certainly have known this for well over 7 or 8 years. And, you invest a bit of time into it, and you know where it's going to go. I mean, if I was to go to my doctors and start talking about some of the subjects I do on this channel, do you know, before I had left that office of my local GP, he would have written out a prescription for some sort of, drugs to make me not think so sharp as what I do. Perhaps, I don't know what they're called. Temazepams, is that what they subscribe? These psychotic drugs for controlling psychotic behaviour. Not that I feel I'm psychotic, but I guarantee you, if I started to bring up some of the subjects I do on these videos with my doctor, he would say you were depressed. It's not a case of being depressed. It's a case of being trapped in a situation that you cannot do nothing about. And you can only talk to a very few people about it. And some of those people are people on this channel. We have Skype conversations. We know what is going on. And, very few people do. So if you're aware of what's going on and what times you're living in right now, then you're blessed with that information. But it's a bit like, I know it's a cliche, but it's a bit like the film The Matrix. Do you want the blue pill or the red pill? Tomorrow you'll wake up, if you take one of those pills, not knowing any of the difference. What I'm saying is, it doesn't make you a better person for knowing at what times you are, other than the fact that you may have took some form of preparations. That if in some certain circumstances you will be in a better position than others. Had you not took those, then you would have been definitely, I believe, in a worse situation. But you can't tell people, you cannot tell some people about the times that we are in right now. They won't have it. And, you can't help but bring up sometimes what it says in the Bible. And, As soon as you mention that book, when did it get to the point that when you mentioned that book, eyebrows naturally started to raise, and eyes started to roll in the back of people's heads? When did it ever get to that point? Because I'm sure there was a point in time where, it was a subject that was, pleasantly welcomed and discussed about, but now it is not. And that is a bit of a pity, because you see, if you only read the last few paragraphs, what they're trying to say in those last few paragraphs of Revelations is, don't add nothing to this book and don't take nothing away, or something will be added to your life or something will be taken away from your life. And I believe the reason is for that is because some information was placed in that Bible. And I believe I've mentioned this before, that some of our recorded history and events, as you know, to mention a few, the floods, Sodom and Gomorrah, and a few others, which some of you may know, were put in that Bible, I believe, for a reason. And the reason why they would say such a thing at the end of the Bible is do not take this out, because it's important information. And it was embedded within a religion so that it would last the test of time. You cannot deny it. The Bible is over 2,000 years old and goes back many, probably 1,000 years before that, in any case, because, we see the similarities in the Sumerian texts with regards to similar stories. So, it's a very old book, but, and I've said this before as well, haven't I? You can read the book, or you can really read that book and understand what is going on. And I believe it is the measure of certain behaviour that was recorded that brought about certain events. I mean, we're talking about the Bible, here we are in the West celebrating Christmas. And some kids, believe me, do not know anything more about that day other than it is a day for receiving presents. And that I find shocking. But, a lot of people will know it's about the birth of Christ. And, it is another thing. While we're on the subject of light-hearted topics, some people believe, right, they're very confused that Jesus is God. Yeah. Even though they know that he was supposedly God's only begotten son. Yeah, it's incredible. But if you ask me who I would put my faith in, and I know a little bit about this subject because I've done a lot of research into it, I came across a unique equation that give me more insight. So, if we're going to, okay, let's just get it off our chest and talk about it. God, what is it? To me, it's living nature, and it is conscious, and that equation proves it. I don't mind if a few of you want me to have another shot at making a bad attempt at trying to explain this equation. I'll do that for you. But to me, that's what God is. It is nature. The nature not just of this planet, but of this solar system and of the universe, and it is conscious. This equation, which is mathematic, which is supposed to be the universal language, states that it is conscious because of the way in which it's recreating things. But, if I had to give something to something, it wouldn't be to Jesus Christ, and it wouldn't be to a lot of other names that people have for their gods. It would be, for me, the universal conscious. And, if you ask me to demonstrate what that was then in some form, well, I could only say that it takes on every form. It is the trees, the grass, all the animals of every kingdom, and that's what I would say. But getting back to where we was talking about, Christmas Day, and a lot of people not even knowing now what the actual meaning of Christianity is and why we celebrate Christmas is only going to be, over the coming years, less known, even though they do teach some of these subjects in schools, so that, kids do have an understanding of some religion. But yeah, if I went to the doctors and started discussing some of these subjects with him, he would write me out a prescription. And it's crazy. It really is. It's insane. And knowing where you are in this time doesn't make it any better. Even though, you're a very logical person, you put things in a logical and concise manner, it doesn't help. At the moment, I'm sure, I would say a majority of you know that there is some economic tension right now, globally. It seems that slowly the IMF are leaking out the true scale of events that took place back in 2007, 2008. I'm talking about the market crash, which at the time wasn't really told to people, but now it's more commonly told, I suppose. It is the situation where, when more and more people know about what really went on the inside, and the majority of people don't, then eventually people talk more commonly and freely about that subject, and it comes out. Well, it's taken this long for it to come out. It seems as though the global economy really did collapse back in 2008, and they've not managed to put it back on track. And in any case, in my view, or what I've seen them try to do, would not put it back on course in any case. They're telling us right now in this country, and I'm not the only one, and I probably am doing a little bit better off than some others, but they're telling people like me with qualifications, professional qualifications, that there is work out there. Yet for 6 months, applying for 100 jobs every fortnight, not one interview. You get the picture. There is no jobs out there, and it's not the fact that you just, you've not been applying for these jobs with, agencies, but you've been applying for jobs across the range, wherever you've seen them come up, and with many agencies. So there's no jobs out there, and should there be in any case, after a global collapse? No. But what it is I don't think they understand is that they are expecting people to be stupid, and people aren't stupid. And what I'm talking about is they're saying go and apply for jobs. And I think if they had the balls, they would probably turn around to some of us and say, look, if you just apply for jobs, you're doing what we're required to ask of you, and therefore, you'll get a small amount of subsidies. Well, they call them benefits, don't they? But it's absolutely insane, because if you look at the government statistics on the OMS report, you'll see that the GDP of the UK, and this is a similar scenario for all Western countries, Europe, including the US and Canada, like I say, across the range, you'll see that the GDP, for instance, in the UK is at 0.5%. That's the gross domestic product. So, that's poor. There's not a lot being manufactured. And when you look at the consumer price index, the CPI, you see a similar picture. It's 0.1%. So nobody's buying. Yet, having me explain this to someone in the job centre the other day, they still didn't get what I was trying to say to them. I was saying, if no one's manufacturing and if no one's buying, then there surely isn't going to be more jobs being created. And, if you know the truth about this, then you're wasting your time applying for these jobs. It's not that I'm giving up. It's just the reality of things. It's the times that we're in, and this is what I say, do you know what times you're in? Because it isn't just problems that human beings are causing each other right now. It is nature actually attacking us full on, and most people don't even know about it. On my other channel, I'm sure there was something said in one of the videos that really offended the system, to the point where they did what they did on that channel. And some could say it's paranoia, but I really believe it was the case. And what I believe was the case was with regards to the climate and what they're saying, global warming, when, I said it's the opposite. And, I've spoke to many people who have agreed with me with what I've said. You might get a little bit of warming, but if you're getting a bit of warming, then more evaporation's taking place in the water cycle, and you're dumping more water vapor into the atmosphere. And then you're going to get, when it passes over land and increases in altitude, more precipitation. You're going to end up with more floods. You guys know it. You've seen it on the news. Floods everywhere. But what happens is that this leads to a positive effect, and I've talked about this in videos. What will happen is that the atmosphere will become saturated with water vapor, and at that point, no sunlight will be able to penetrate through the clouds, or if some does, it will be in small quantities, and that will lead to cooling. If no solar radiance gets to the surface, then it will lead to a cooling effect. And when you get cooling, you have snow fall instead of this rain. Now, can you imagine over the northern hemisphere the amount of rain that we've had all of a sudden turn into snow in that quantity? Well, that's what we're facing in the not too distant future. And once you get snowfall over the northern hemisphere, you also have a perfect reflective surface to keep the planet cool. And what we're talking about here is, what we're witnessing is the early events of an ice age. And it should be no surprise to scientists when I say that we are heading for another ice age. We certainly are. And you know it as well as I know it, that it was on the cards for many, many years, that we were supposed to have already been in a glacial period. And that, it has been a slight delay. Now, if that's been towards, the global warming, then caused by CO2, which I doubt, because now we're seeing graphs emerge that there's a breakaway from CO2 and temperatures. And there's a lot of scientists, and have been, like myself, for years saying CO2 is not the cause of global warming. If anything, things will thrive more in in an atmosphere with abundant CO2. So, that's what we're looking at. But the other thing I feel on that channel, which I may have mentioned, which probably was close to the truth, is that the relationship between the Arctic climate and the magnetic pole migrating, taking it along with it, could also be the cause of, that ice age. Because let's face it, according to these so-called scientists that talk about global warming, this has only been talked about since the 1980s. Well, the magnetic pole was shifting a long time before that, but it was only up until about the 1980s when things started to get a little bit more faster as they went along. What I mean is the pole migrated more distance in shorter periods of time. And as I've showed in videos, the pole has stepped up 3 or 4 gears as it's gone along. And then recently we see it deviate from its course, and that really is of concern, because I think that the magnetic field is already starting to break down. I think we may be very, very close, if not already at that point of 40 degrees. And the reason why I say that is because of the deviation in the North Pole. As up until now been tracking in a straight line, and that was heading towards Siberia. Now it is slightly deviating, further south. So I think we are in a point in time now where we're going to start seeing things change more rapidly. But what I'm talking about is just the effects of nature. What is more of a concern to me is, as we get closer and closer to a societal breakdown, and it's going to happen, guys. You know, if you think it's not going to happen, well, I can tell you now, you can take the bank, it's going to happen. But what alarms me more than anything is the behaviour of people. Right? I can guarantee you at that point in time, you are going to see humans do some pretty barbaric things to each other in order for themselves to survive. You know what, we're seeing it already. Have you seen how the elites are preparing for themselves to be tucked away very comfortably in these luxurious, deep underground bases, thinking that what is taking place will be, you know, in their lifetime over? Yeah, no foresight. We're in a lot of trouble. If we go back into an ice age, you know what's going to happen? Is there's going to be a stampede of people to those warmer places on this earth where, you know, some vegetation can thrive and crops can be grown, but we're overpopulated. We've got 7 billion people on this planet, and I understand people saying that this is still a big planet and there's still a lot of uninhabited countryside out there and people can survive, but no way. I guarantee you, no way will 7 billion people survive. There's going to be a lot of people fall, and they're going to fall within weeks of societal collapse. And, you know, it's just the things that people are going to see and witness during that. I mean, how many of you would survive if I left you on the Arctic ice sheet right now? Could you live like an Eskimo or an Inuit, is it? One of these indigenous tribes that still, you know, teach their family members and their young the skills of survival in these climates. Could you live like that? Because if not, then your only other choice is to get probably somewhere where it's warmer on the earth. You know, where food is going to be a scarcity in any case. But it is the thing, you know, when people do have to migrate, just like the caribou do in Siberia, you know, they're going to have to leave all those valuables behind. And the true value of those valuables right now is nothing. You know, you will swap that Porsche or that brand new 4x4 or even your house for a couple of tins of food when you're starving, because it'll have no value. True value will come down to true resources, and for you as human beings, those are food and water. And, you know, that's why I say, do you know what times you're in? Do you know what you're facing? This is not depression. This is not, you know, fear porn. This is what's happening. And, you know, here's another thing, guys. All these countries at the moment that are involved in bombing Syria amounts to a world war, at war. You think about it. China, Russia, Germany, France, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, the United Kingdom, all these countries are bombing one country. Tell me that is not a world at war. Tell me it's not a world at war when all these countries in some way or form are sanctioning each other right now. How does that work? Isn't sanctioning a form of war? Maybe soft war? Yeah. It's shocking times that we're in right now. And it's negative, I know. You know, it's not positive, and the outlook is even more bleak for the future, because these problems are only getting worse. The climate's getting worse. The general attitude of people is getting worse. And if you want to know what comes next, probably the answer's in that book that I began this video talking about, that Bible. Because it describes in some circumstances that just before nature went about sorting these problems out, that there was behavioural patterns in two circumstances, and one circumstance for you to realise yet already. Some of you may already know, but there were certain behaviours that was more apparent in them times, that led up to these events, what nature, um, did. Let's just say the floods and Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you read Revelations, there's a promise of the earth going through a similar, or should I say humans going through a similar scenario where the earth is used against them. It's, it's down to you guys to realise what times you're in, for you to know what's to come next. And maybe that, if you're not already preparing for it, and it's going to be very difficult for people to prepare for what is coming, but at least they'll be a little bit better prepared than if there wasn't at all. So guys, it's a very bleak outlook. So make the most of it whilst you can, if you can, because things are going to get worse. You're going to notice it. I just thought I'd share a few thoughts with you guys. That was the purpose of this. Like I say, I had a conversation with my wife about a similar thing, and I was just talking to her about tightening the families up a little bit. It's a time for people to work together and just be a bit more honest with each other and be a bit more loving with each other. That's what we should be concentrating on more than anything. And let's hope that the worst of what is to come is a long way off, and not, as it may be, very close. Because I don't know how some of you guys even are going to take it when you start witnessing some of the behaviour of human beings and what they're capable of doing and what they are going to be doing. So this is a cycle that seems to go round regularly. And you just think of some of the atrocities of the Second World War, and that might be close. Cannibalism won't be off the agenda for some of these people. They'll be back to it. They'll be left with no choice. What will you eat? You've got to survive. There's some form of way, you'd be surprised what you will eat. So guys, as always, you take care. We'll continue in the new year with monitoring of the North Pole and climate, and occasionally, we'll discuss the increasing poor behaviour of humans from time to time, and give it some thought. What times are you in? And as always, guys, you take care, and bye for now.